Amy, I'm getting a really bad reverberation.
I'm getting feedback too.
That's better. I can't hear you now.
Just one person can talk if the sound is coming in. That's why. So it looks like we've got a few people in here.
How do you see that?
Let me go ahead and share my screen. So we've got that opened up. All right, so Adrian, can you hear me?
Can.
Hey, Adrian, can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
You can hear me?
I can. It looks like we've got a couple of people in here in the room. So just let me know if you are ready to go ahead and present, Adrian, and or we can wait just a couple more minutes.
Yeah, we can go ahead and just start.
To see if folks come in. Yeah, so it is being recorded, so we will be able to use this later and people can go back to it. So just so everybody knows, you can also double click on the presentation where you see it's called Cybersecurity and Data Governance. If you double click on that, it'll make that the larger part of your screen that you see, and you'll see the videos of the presenters on the side a little bit smaller. This will help you to follow along a little bit better. So with that, Adrian, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
All right. Can you go ahead and start your, yeah, so first wanted to say hello to everyone and thank you for being here. We appreciate it. I know you're busy, but hopefully you'll find this interesting and learn a little bit. And at any point you have any questions, just type in the chat window if you want to, and we'll do our best to answer them. So, Amy, if we go next. All right, so we're going to talk about being secure in our workplace. So just a few very simple things that would be real handy. So one is we're going to talk about passwords. Another is two-factor authentication, and then we're going to talk about your team. Obviously, there's a lot more, than just this, but these are some simple things that a lot of people just don't do, and it's a good place to start. All right, Amy, if you go next. All right, so first of all, passwords should be very strong. And why is this important? Now, there's things called brute force attacks and password lists. So often it's not a single person at a computer trying to figure out your password. It's going to be racks of servers that are going through all kinds of things. They might go on, for example, your bank website or schwab.com or any major site. And if they can figure, if they know your email address, then they can just start trying lots and lots of passwords. And for example, dictionaries, for example, there are leaked password lists out on the internet. And it's very common for people to reuse passwords. You don't want to do that. And this is because with net sites, then that's a real problem. So you want to try to make your password strong. And we'll talk. All right, next. So what does strong mean? Primarily, the longer the password, the better. If you think about every letter in a password is one of 26 options. And if you have upper and lowercase, it becomes 52. And if you add in numbers and then you add in symbols or characters, you end up with eventually an almost not an infinite number of options, but very long. And the more, it basically makes it much tougher for a computer to quote guess what the password is. And if you don't have to remember it, if at all possible, add complexity. So that password at the end of that line, that's one of my passwords. It's been slightly changed a little bit from one inside I use. And this is one obviously I'm not going to remember, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. But never ever use your name, your company, your kids' names. Those things are too hard to find, or they're too easy to find, and people will guess them. Next. So for example, that password that I showed you on the last page, most of my passwords are like that, and I don't know them. They're just very long, often much longer than that, and very complex. And you can use a password manager, for example, there's one called 1Password or LastPass, and these are can be built into your browser. When you go to a site, they can automatically fill those in for you and stay very secure. And they're really cheap as well. And I recommend at SmartRIA, we get one for every employee in our company, and we require that for all of our logins, which is also nice because then if someone leaves the company, you can then revoke access to that. That way they're not able to continue getting into your systems. All right, next. So next thing we'll talk about is two-factor authentication. And what does that mean? What that is, it's two-factor. One factor is something you know, which is your password. So you have your username, which is often your email, and then you have your password. And the second part is something you have. So if I know your username and password, and you don't have two-factor authentication on, I can probably get into your account. But if you have two-factor authentication on, then it's going to send you a text message, or even better and much more secure as an authenticator app. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So text messages, there have been cases where people have been able to spoof them. So it's considered to be less secure. Places are not using text message as an option anymore, but it is better than nothing. So, all right, next, Amy. All right, so we talked a little bit about using an app. There are some hardware keys you can use, like you can have a thing on your keychain that gives you a key. Another is some other tools that are popular you can have on your phone. One I like is Duo Mobile because it makes it easy to back up, and if you lose your phone or you need to restore it, you can easily do that. And Google Authenticator is probably the most popular one. And until recently, if you lost your phone, you couldn't restore from Google, but now you can. And another one that's kind of popular is called Authy. So these are things that you can just use. And often if you come to a site and it says use Google Authenticator, these other apps will work just as well. All right, the other part, there we go. The other part, the other third thing we're going to talk about is your team. And this is really important. And we want to create a shared vision and help people see the big picture and explain to them why. Because often, people will, if they understand, why they're doing something, they'll be much more likely to do it. And to help them understand, well, why is it important to you, to your firm, and why is it important to them? And you want to communicate that frequently, and if at all possible, try to make it fun. Try to share examples of of when people do things right. Share news articles you come across when you see that unfortunately when people fall for things. Next. So the importance of people and employees can be part of the problem and part of the solution. And part of the reason of this is it doesn't matter how good your systems are. You can have extremely secure um, servers, passwords, website, everything. But then there's a thing called social engineering. And this is where the thing that gets a lot of people more often these days is someone calls up or they send an email and it looks legitimate and but it's not. And it might look like it came from a very popular vendor or or like even Facebook or your bank or really pretty much anything, the U.S. government, for example. But it's when you look at the links, they're actually going to other sites. And then you might have basically tricks you into entering your username and password into a site that is not that site. And now they have your username and password. Another thing is called, that's getting a little more common, is called spear phishing. And this is where they will take emails and make it look like it's coming from, it's a conversation between people in your company, but it's really not. So if you see an email that says, coming from, accounting at your company, and they're saying, hey, can or often it's to accounting, but it might be from someone else in the company that goes to accounting that says, hey, please pay this bill. And then, but it's not really one that's supposed to be paid. And that's one you really have to watch out for. And so just keep in mind that people are always attacking all the time. If you were to go out to your website servers right now, you would see people around the world trying to get into it. And you need to watch for that, watch for the people side as well. Next. So here's one. This is a company called Voya. And some people were calling in and they were basically tricking their customer support people into resetting their passwords for them. So imagine someone calls up to your company and says, hey, I can't log in. Can you help me? And they say, sure. And your customer support people are trying to be helpful and friendly. They help them out. But what they're actually doing is helping criminals. And this company ended up having to pay $1 million fine for that, for their customer support people being really friendly, but not being trained in how to avoid that. All right, next. So a few resources. This is one, I mentioned phishing. And it's a really fun one you can do as a team. We've done that at SmartRIA. We'll go through it, and it gives you examples and says, is this a phishing email or is it a legitimate email? And it gives you some things to look at. And the top one, phishingquiz.withgoogle.com. If you search for that, you'll find it as well. And then here's two password managers that I mentioned as well. And Amy?
All right. Are you able to hear me, Adrian?
Yes.
Okay,
sure
perfect. So what I was going to talk to you about, so thank you for sharing that about the cybersecurity. Now to kind of move on about what are some practical things you can do cybersecurity wise, really simple to reduce your risk of exposure. Like what Adrian was talking about, we wanted to talk to you about some of the solutions that our team is working on and has partnered with other teams so that you can make sure that you're protecting your data, your client's data. You can understand your vulnerabilities and be prepared if something happens. So the first piece is about doing vulnerability testing and scans. So it's great to have cybersecurity policies that you put in place. It's great to have every employee sign that they're going to use the password manager, However, if you don't understand if you don't test it on a regular basis, you don't understand what your true vulnerabilities are. And so we have partnered with Brian Hahn with Tradecraft to offer vulnerability testing and scans, in addition with our due diligence platform and compliance platform. So this complete package is cybersecurity preparedness solution. It includes testing. And I do have, let me pull up what some of that looks like for you. So with this testing, you'll get a computer that comes to you from Tradecraft, so that you can start mapping out where your different servers and what operating systems that different folks are using. So we partner together, giving you some technology, putting together mapping resources, and then using our compliance platform to put all of this together to show you what you get. But the testing is going to be external vulnerability scans. So we will scan your website, your client portal, your email server, and see if there are known vulnerabilities there. It will also provide a full report of that. We'll do an internal vulnerability scan, see what your teams are using. I'm trying to actually pull up the report of what that looks like. So you're able to see it. It's not pulling up for me. But then also mapping what your external servers. That's one of the biggest challenges for some people. It's like, how do you map everything that you have? How do you map all of the different devices that your employees are using, the servers that you have, internal, external, printers that you've got? How do you make sure that you're staying on top of that? And with this cybersecurity preparedness solution, once a year we can come in, do that testing for you to see if there are known vulnerabilities, using some of the same tools that hackers will use just to see what your exposure is. Do that mapping so you can see exactly what your firm has, and within a click of a button, you can actually add things to that, takes things away, so that at any given time, if you ever have an audit, you can know right away where that report would be, produce that easily, and be able to get through that audit more clearly. Let's see, here's our vulnerability scan. The second piece of this is, like, you want to do that internal and external vulnerability scanning. You want to have the mapping, know everything that you have, so that you know what your exposure is. But then you also want to look at what's the exposure of your data and your client's data with the vendors that you use. How are you performing your vendor due diligence and staying on top of data breaches that they may have? How do you know, like, what your employee access is to each of these vendors, and what are they doing with that data? So with this vendor due diligence platform, you're able to go and create a vendor due diligence list. You can use any of our template attestations for vendors that we have that come with the platform, that goes through a series of questions. We have one that's made for service providers, one that's made for other types of vendors that you would work with. But within that, you'll be able to easily pull up what that list is, evaluate what the risk is, monitor. You'll be able to see if there have been any breaches that have come about, and easily report on it. If there are incidents, SmartRIA has a database of vendors that we actually do due diligence on. So we provide that to all of our users using this platform. So you'll be able to easily see privacy policies, what types of information these vendors are using. You'll be able to have access to any of the vendors that we have within our database, as well as create your own vendor list, your own attestations, and keep track of incident reporting. We provide system-wide incident reporting. If we become aware of something, that will automatically go into your reporting system. But you also have the ability within the app to create your own incident report. If it's, you know, an employee loses a laptop, if somebody clicks on one of those phishing links that Adrian just described, you can actually report on internal incidents that happen, but also if you become aware of incidents with any of your vendors that aren't part of our database, you can also report on those. Let me go back one more. The other piece that you can do with this is notify. If there are, if client data is affected, you can actually send out, require a client notification so that you get that alert and know that you have an additional step that you need to take because there's been a data breach or an incident that's happened. The kind of final piece with this vendor due diligence and data governance is access control. You want to know, like Adrian said, who has access to the different data that you use. You can monitor it when employees come in. You can actually create a profile, see exactly what does this employee have access to. Do they have access to personally identifiable information? Do they have access to financial records? And really get how up to date are they with the different policies that you have, as well as training. We also have you know, a basic training center where you can kind of create your own training for different cybersecurity and data protection, or you can use some of the Quizlets that are in this app, but just to help keep track of keeping your employees on top of the latest data breaches that are coming in, the latest practices, why they need to know about different phishing schemes that are happening. We actually had a client who had an email that was sent out, and within the middle of that email chain, so it wasn't a new one trying to pretend, but within the middle of that email chain, he had gotten breached and started sending out emails that contain phishing links to his contacts and to the recipients of those emails. So having that ongoing training is critical to make sure that you're protecting your firm from, you know, getting violations with the SEC. You're protecting your clients and just protecting the integrity of your business. The final kind of piece with this is, how do you put all of that together? You've got your scans that happen. You get to do, you know, what are potential data breaches and vulnerabilities that your system has? How do you then monitor all of the external vendors that might have access to it and keep track of any incidents that might happen with them? And then putting that all together with employee start dates, employee attestations and training, and you can do that using that SmartRIA Pro platform. And with that, Adrian, are you still on?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so that's what Adrian is going to be talking about in his next session. I was not able to see the any questions that were coming in while I was presenting there. So, but if anybody does have any, feel free to type the question in the chat box. We'd be happy to answer any of those for you. Or Adrian, do you want to fill in any gaps?
No, I think the one thing I would mention is with the security scan. There's a lot of stuff included there. It's a professional, basically a professional ethical hacker. Is going to be running scans to try to get into your network. And there are also options to, if you'd prefer, to have people's home networks scanned instead, if your people are still working from home, as a lot of us are.
Yes.
And it also gives you a map of things, of a network map, and it shows you, a whole bunch of things that you can then do to then take care of those. And it gives you a complete, set of documentation that if you were audited, you could come and then you could basically, show that here are the things that we had this security scan, the security audit, and here's the things we did about it. So it's actually very, very comprehensive.
Yep, so I've gone ahead and pulled that up, Adrian. If anyone has any questions about that and wants to ask those in the chat box. One of the things that's included with this cybersecurity preparedness is being able to is mapping out all of this information on all of the systems and things that are affected. And so it's just, it's nice to have somebody externally who can go in and help you gather that information. We'll also provide a cybersecurity policy template that you can customize for your firm. And then some of the recommended documents that are going to be in that policy template, like having the mapping, how often you're doing the scanning, those are going to be included as well. So if we don't have any questions, what we might do, if you all want to go over to the booth, I know Tom and Ellie from our team are over there talking about some of the products that we have, answering questions. And then in 8 minutes, Adrian is going to be presenting in session 2, a live demo of the SmartRIA platforms and technology.
Yeah, and Tom loves to be aggravated, so feel free to aggravate him.
Please do aggravate him, yes.
Yes, he would love that.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining this first session. Feel free to reach out to us. You can go to our booth. Feel free to email Adrian or I. We're happy to talk to you.
Yep. Thank you.